let's start off class by, if you haven't signed up with your name, the nameplate, come up here and grab a sheet of paper, fold it in half, put your first name and last name. All right, we'll start off by going this way to this way, doing some brief introductions. Tell me your name so that everyone else can hear it in the class. Tell me, I take it you're all freshmen? Anyone not a freshman? Okay, so no need to tell me that. Tell me what your proposed major is or is going to be, and why. What do you want to do? And tell me where you're from. Like, where are you actually from? Okay. I grew up in Chicago or something. So let's start here. Okay. Yep, if we can stand up. Maybe it'll be better. Everybody, each person, whoever it's your turn, you stand up. So, next person.
My name is Melissa. My pronouns are she, her. I'm majoring in psychology, and I want to major in psychology because I really like everything about it. I grew up in Melrose, but my parents are from Mexico.
Okay, nice. Nice to meet you.
My name is Natalie. I'm majoring in pre-nursing. I'm doing it because, I don't know, something about surgery gets me. My pronouns are she, hers. I was raised in Cicero, but my parents are from Mexico.
Excellent. Yes. Sorry.
My name is Lorraine. I'm majoring in psychology. I don't really know what I want to do yet. And I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, but I grew up in Chicago.
Okay. Hang on one second. There is some cards right here, piece of paper. Grab them, fold them in half, and there's some markers. Pass the markers out. Write your first and last name on them.
That black one.
Yeah.
Okay, continuing on. You, sir.
Hello, my name is Sergio Alvarez. I was born in Chicago, specifically the area of Hermosa, Latin community. I'm majoring in psychology. Well, I'm going for a social worker in 5 years. It's not too great. And I'm looking to give back to the community, just help around, specifically those people in the community.
Okay, excellent. Yes.
My name's Amaryllis. I'm majoring in veterinarian, and I grew up around Belmont Community, Chicago.
My name's Alexa. I'm majoring in pre-nursing, and I grew up around Albany Park, Chicago, and I'm majoring in pre-nursing or nursing because I'm very interested in the human body, the anatomy, but I also want to help people out. So I'm interested in
Where you go?
My name is Trinity, and I'm majoring in nursing because I also love kids, and I'm from St. Louis.
Next.
My name is Donna. Wait, what are we doing?
Name, major or proposed major, and where you from?
I want to do pre-med, and I'm from Mosaic.
Okay.
My name is Eduardo. I want to go into nursing because I just want to help people, but also want to go to med school to get a doctorate degree in neurology. And
fascination with neurology?
The idea of it not being fully known, but also the fact that there's multiple possibilities and could have increased outcomes through improving the therapy and making the body better, but also figuring out more in psychology and other aspects of learning.
Good. Charting a new path, right? Figuring out new stuff. Yes.
My name is Daisy. I'm still deciding what I'm gonna major in, and I was raised in.
My name is Jessica, she, her, I'm 22 and I was raised in North Chicago.
I'm Mariah, and I'm doing nursing. Not sure why. I like helping people. I like working with people. So, yeah, cool. And then, yeah, anything else?
No, where are you from?
Niles, I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's like having nerves. Yeah.
I'm Sianja, I go by Cino. I'm majoring in sociology, so going into social work. And I am originally from Wheeling.
Fiona, that's in my last name.
Yeah, that's fine, be honest.
Okay, yeah, my name's Fiona, I'm from Chicago. I'm majoring in behavioral neuroscience. I don't really know why, I was kind of just told that I put that as my major, so I just went with it. But
My name's Charlize. I'm majoring in psychology, minoring in special ed. Right now, I just kind of love to be like with people that are disabled, you know, kind of help them out, you know, so they overall become like, don't not treated different, you know. I'm from Dallas, Texas. Living in the city. So yeah. I'm Carolina. I'm majoring in nursing. Well, I wanted to because every time I have to go to a hospital, I have pretty messed up nurses, so I wanted like at least better in that. And I'm from Kansas, but I was raised in Chicago.
My name is Yansel. I'm majoring in labor delivery nurse. I'm from Rose Park, and I love babies. I work at a daycare, so that's what I'm planning to major in.
I'm Arjun, I'm majoring in pre-nursing, and I'm originally from California, near Stockton.
Okay, so more.
Yeah.
I'm Guadalupe Morales, and I'm majoring in pre-vet, and I was ready to be a teacher.
If you can, sir, grab a sheet of paper here and mark and write your name on it. Get your photo here. And back there.
my name is Vicky, I'm majoring in psych and minoring in business. And I'm from Oakland Park, but my parents are from Florida.
Why the minor in business?
Cause I wanna get into like the business of psychology.
Okay, like organizational psychologist. Back there.
My name's Alexia, I live in Lawrence. I'm a major in psych, and my long-term goal is to be a psychiatrist, so it's, and I'm originally from Chicago, but I was raised a little bit more out west in Carey Street. I don't know if you've ever heard of that place, but yeah.
I'm Kita. I'm majoring in psychology, and then I'm choosing between 3 minors at this moment. But the reason why I chose psychology was because of the fact that I'm just really interested in how like, the brain works and like what affects the brain and what affects behavior and why people act the way that they do. I'm from Chicago. I was born in like Evergreen. I just moved more like northwest.
So like 95th and Western?
Something like that.
My name is Melanie. I'm majoring in pre-med because I want to be either an orthopedic surgeon or a pediatrician. And I was raised in the Hermosa neighborhood. Yeah.
My name is Aziel. I'm majoring in secondary education, and I'm from Chicago.
And
My name is
Andy? your proposed major? Where are you from?
I was born in Peru and I was raised in Cisco, and my major right now is neuroscience.
Why neuroscience?
Because I want to be a neurosurgeon. I just think that I wanted to be in some field in the hospital.
Mhm.
I just thought neurosurgery was like really interesting to me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Welcome all. I'm Dr. Ross. I actually got my master's degree from here many years ago, so former alumni of Dominican, but that was in business. My doctor is in psychology, obviously, so I have a background in both psychology and business, right? So for business, I do international business. I go buy properties all over the world and invest and stuff like that. But for psychology, I'm what's known as an international psychologist, which is I go out to different parts of the world and build mental health programs for impoverished people, right? Indigenous populations, all sorts of different cultures, make policy changes so that the governments can give them more money, help them get resources, change their life, change their outcomes, all of these different things. It's also called mostly, you could say like a cultural psychologist or cross-cultural psychologist, right? Who here has taken a psychology course in high school? Maybe everyone. Who here has never taken any psychology course? For the people who've never taken psychology course, what's your thought on psychology? Like, what do you think this is about? What is psychology about to you? Yes.
I guess, human or like brain mostly.
Okay, behavior, brain, anything else?
Yeah, it's a
Okay, so the brain, anything else, anything more than that? Okay, we can say brain is part of it, but it's a lot more, right? So we'll define psychology in this class as the study of mental life. You're like, well, what does that mean, mental life? Your mental experience while you're alive, right? Like right now, think of your mental experience. You're looking at me or looking at the screen or something like, how is this even happening? Like, is there a recording device or something? Right? Even though you're looking all the way up here, do you actually know what's happening over there? Even though you can see it? You're not fixated or paying attention. So we'll kind of dive more into it. So think of it as a study of mental life. Now on Canvas, who's been on Canvas to look at the course? Okay, there's nothing on there for the most part, right? But I'll show you how to access, at least for now, the book. And what you'll do is you'll need to go to the bookstore and pay for an access code. And you'll go back onto Canvas and they'll show you how to log in with the access code and you'll get an ebook. So you'll be able to access all the materials really for the course on through Canvas with that access code. I'll upload also the syllabus probably before Thursday and get kind of most of the content that we're gonna go through before Thursday. So give me till Thursday to get Canvas up and running. All right, who here believes in the soul? And what's the soul to you? Yeah.
I feel like a soul and a spirit are two different things. I feel like a soul is what we make it, like what defines us. if that makes sense.
Okay, so soul is really you, like a personality, or who you are while you're alive.
Like deep down inside.
Okay, an entity. Anybody else got a different definition? Yes.
I think soul really aligns you with like a purpose, something that's deep inside of you that like you know, like your soul purpose, like
I mean, that's a good one. Use soul purpose, right?
Yeah.
S-O-L-E, but still, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it means.
Mhm.
And so a purpose, right? Something that drives you to do what you're supposed to do in this
Yeah.
lifetime or something. Anybody have some different? Who think a soul and spirit is different besides this young lady? Who thinks spirit and soul is the same thing? You say you think it's different too? Why?
I don't know, like
like soul and spirit, like, I don't know, it's like, to me, I see like a soul is like someone's like unfiltered self almost, just kind of like who you really are deep down. But when I think spirit, like, it's not kind of dumb, but like, it reminds me of like a person, like, I don't know, you know?
I understand. All right, so think of really the soul as kind of the mind, right? The mind and the soul are actually like the same working definition. So once again, your mental life is really your soul, whereas the spirit, you know, if we want to define that, we say that's the energy that gives you life, right? You're like a battery. Once your battery's out, you're gone, regardless of what you're thinking, right? But that's the spirit. It's like your connection to the creator, if you believe in a creator, or the source, however you want to define it in your own way, that gives you actual life. It's nothing more than just a battery, energy. Eventually that'll come. Whereas your mind or your soul is more your mental experience, right? It's like everything you've taken in through this experience that makes you make decisions, make you feel a certain way, and kind of who you are as a personality. But we get more into that. So what we're going to do today is just kind of briefly talk about what psychology is, the history of it, how it came about, maybe where we are today with it, and maybe how to do some scientific inquiry into psychology, right? We don't want to make everything an assumption or an opinion. We want to be scholarly, right? We want to have good data and find facts, and we'll kind of learn how to do that as well. And then talk about what you could do with the field of psychology. Personally, I think psychology is the most important field ever. Why? It deals with you. You can't escape yourself, right? But for the most part, you're a social animal, you can't escape others. So if you can understand good psychology, you can change your behavior, right? You can be in control of yourself. You can overcome your issues, right? But it's extremely difficult. Why is it difficult? On a 24-hour period, we're only about 10% conscious. Who knows what conscious means? Who could give their definition? I'm not asking a hard question. I'm asking your definitions of this stuff, not mine. Yes?
It's like when your presence is like here, like right now. Like
So
I'm
you're
here with you.
present, you here in this moment. Okay, good. Anybody else got a different? Yes.
It's conscious, right? It's like, things that you're aware of.
Okay, awareness. Anybody else?
When I think about conscious is my second mind, like my second opinion. It's like I like think about it, but I think about it again before doing it. You know what I mean?
I get you. Yeah, that's a good argument. We'll talk about the theory of duality, right? How maybe there's a theory that there's two of us, okay? Inside of us. One that's good, bad, and maybe one in the middle. But there's theories that there are multiple people in us, right? People have multiple personality disorders, can be twin views somewhere, depending on the context, the environment. Anybody else have a different definition? So think of consciousness as fixed attention. Yes, you're in the classroom. For those looking back all the way up here, you're like, hey, I see everybody peripherally, but you don't. You see what you're exactly fixated on at that time, right? Even though you're looking, scanning this entire room, every time you look, you're not looking over here, there, you're maybe looking at me, right? So consciousness is fixed attention. Fixed attention. And for the most part, I would say 90% of our everyday life is unconscious. Not thinking about walking. Nobody's thinking about their bodily function. You're not going to make yourself go to the restroom. You're just going to feel it and you got to go. You're not making your heart beat. You're not making yourself breathe. But it's happening. You're like, wow, this is fascinating. My heart's beating without me telling it to. I'm breathing. Just 20 years, 19 years, whatever. Right? You're not doing a lot of things. 90% of your life is automatic. You're driving, you're not thinking about it at all. For the most part. You may have to think, certain lawyers. But think of that. So then it poses some very, very deep questions. It's like, really, who are you? Who is it? Who is any of us? Do we know who we are? Right? So we'll discuss that too. If I were to ask you now, who are you? You'd be like, oh, I'm this and that and this. But I'm like, well, is that true? Is that because of your culture you were born in? Was it because of where you were born geographically? Was it because of your gender, your race, sex? Right? Is it because your mom and dad conditioned you to have those beliefs, values, how to think, how to dress? Is it social media influences you? Right? So in essence, you might say like, hey, we're not really ourselves, but maybe we're just environmentally dependent. Right? And in an environment that changes, you might have a new person. Right? If it changes. Things to think about. So this is where psychology comes from. It comes from philosophy. So psychology really took off in the 1800s, but you're like, 1800s not that long ago. It's like 2,000 years ago. I mean, 200 years ago. It's like, what about the rest of mankind? We didn't think about like being alive, existence, like why we do what we do. Yes, they did, but they didn't really put it into a concise field, right? Like there was no consensus about things. So we'll talk a little bit about philosophy. That's where it comes from. All right, so yeah, briefly, so international psychology was what I do. I do some philanthropy work. I have a foundation that helps out in South Africa, Peru, a bunch of stuff like that. All right, so the textbook, when you access it, says person, mind, and brain. I think that's pretty accurate, right? Because a person is maybe a complete self, but then inside of you is a brain. And then besides your brain is a mind that have different experiences that process through the brain. So I think that could work. Person, mind, and brain, I wouldn't completely say, that's it. But I would say mental life, right? Just keep thinking about that. The process of mental life. Okay, where psychologists work. So what could you do with a psychology degree? Right? You could work in a school psychologist. You could be a therapist, marriage and family, work with divorces. You can do individual therapy, psychoanalysis, applied behavior. You can help people work with their disorders, right? Their compulsions, their obsessions. You could do a bunch of things. You could work for governments, right? So you could work in hospitals, be a resident there. The government needs a ton of counselors and therapists. You could work for businesses and nonprofits, do organizational psychology, like, hey, how do we change the culture of this school, right? Even Dominican women do. Like, hey, we want to change the culture, the way that people leave the school, how people leave, how will we do that? Right? You need a psychologist to do that type of work. And then other things, right? So medical schools, stuff like that. But you could do anything. Primarily, if you understand psychology, you'd be great at anything else, because most things have to deal with people, right? Also economics, business, all sorts of things have to deal with people. So maybe towards the end of the class, we'll finally learn how to manage us, right? Which is most important, overcoming ourselves. Who here doesn't have any problems in their life? Who here has problems? Okay, right. We all have problems, right? Who here is introverted or would describe themselves? I mean, who would like to say where they think their introvertedness comes from? Yes, where?
Just life, like in general, like ups and downs in life, I guess.
I mean, there was some trigger, like a catalyst, like, hey, in third grade, they called me out of class. I was really embarrassed, and ever since that, I was traumatized.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could say like trauma, I guess, like
Yeah.
it causes you to become more introverted and like aware of what you're doing, that's what you're saying. So.
Yeah, think about this, everything has a point of origin, right? The difficult thing is actually trying to spot it, right? And we say most life is unconscious, right? It takes a lot to bring unconscious things to the surface to be aware of it, right? That's why people say, I don't have a problem. People who have problems, right? They're not aware of it, right? And we're also biased to ourselves. Everybody's the greatest of all time according to that, right? Somebody else, you were gonna say something?
I think like social anxiety and like being the only child.
Okay, so one situation could be an only child, right? Maybe you're put into a lot of pressure, your family is, kind of dependent on you too much, and that, like, too much pressure makes me anxious, too much anxiety. So think of this, your body, in an automated process, going back to things that happen automatically after thinking, wants to constantly move towards the center point. And we call that in psychology homeostasis. And so you're like, hey, why do I tap my feet? It's to make me feel more comfortable. Boredom is an anxiety, right? Anything can be an anxiety. Anything that takes you from homeostasis, you're like, I'm gonna click my pen, I'm gonna chew gum, I'm gonna look at my phone and do this. You're not even conscious of it. You're like, okay, yeah, I am. You're not really conscious of any of these things. You shift in your chair, right? You touch your hair, you do whatever. It's to bring you to homeostasis automatically. You're not aware of it, right? So don't feel bad about any of the stuff that you do, because we all do it. We all need something to bring us back to a center of balance. But we should try to, over time, be more aware. Okay? Oh, I wonder why I do this. Right? Maybe I can overcome this. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the history of psychology. And also, okay, intuition. So we say, hey, we have a gut hunch about things. We can make assumptions. Who believes in intuition? How would you think or explain how intuition works? Your own words. Yes.
Well, it also depends on like what type of psychology you want to do it through. Because if you believe in evolutionary psychology, basically it's like all the instincts from our ancestors and things like that that are passed on through generations and things like that. So you learn from their experience, and let's say if they had a fear of spiders, or you have fear of spiders because of the fact that they know that it was dangerous, you get that instinct of like, okay, stay away from that, and reading of evolution. So it depends on what you believe in.
Yes, right? So we say maybe evolutionary psychology say, hey, stuff inside you actually comes from like generations ago. Right? You might be focused on mom and dad, like, just like mom and dad, like you might act like great grandma or something. Right? Because of what they experienced. And nature deemed that it was important for that particular thing to be part of you, because it thought that you might actually face the same sort of threats. Right? So nature is trying to constantly make us survive in some sense. Who else got an explanation for intuition? How do you think it will work? Yes.
It's like your a gut feeling.
How do you think that will work? How would it be activated?
I think like a trigger, like the generational thing. I think like it's like experiences that you've been through before, and that triggers you into having a gut feeling about something, like a situation.
Okay, you're just saying you could sense it in some
Yeah.
way, right? So think of we have our basic 5 senses, but maybe there's more senses, right? And what they call ESP is like extrasensory perception. Maybe you can perceive things outside of sight, sound, taste. We are electrochemical bodies, which means we do radiate a field. So when people say, oh man, I saw your aura, I can feel your aura. Like, what do you mean my aura? Like this force field? It's true, right? We have measurements to show that you do project up to almost 2 meters some sort of electrical field about who you are, right? Because you're an electrical chemical body. We have, think of when it comes to mating. You're like, well, how do you select a mate? How do you find who's attractive? It's not gonna always be physically, right? Like, what's the key ingredient? Right? Like, there's some stuff out there besides just the physical awareness of things. There's pheromones. We emit them. And we have receptors in our nose that can pick them up. So sometimes we walk past a random person and we're like, wow, who's that? Right? And it may not even really be your physical type. Right? Or you get to know someone who's like, I didn't really physically find you attractive, but what happens, right? We give off these projection of hormones, pheromones, all these different things to potential mates. And it makes them attracted to us and us attracted to them so that we can continue this process of human creation, right? 8 billion human beings on Earth. It's gonna keep continuing. So fascinating stuff, right? All about us and all about others. All right, so we're trying to understand intuition, but that has its limitations. We're like, okay, that sounds great, but honestly, how can you prove that to others? And how could you put it in the paper? How could you measure it? How could you, well, okay, maybe intuition doesn't hold up, right? On a scientific basis, right? We may feel that it's real, and it could very well be real to us, but we really can't go off of that, right? So we think of scientific methods. So we think of a broad range of procedures to obtain scientific information about the world. Scientific process starts with a question, right? About something, right? Why, why do your generation, would it be millennials? What would your generation be? Gen Z. Yeah, no. Why do Gen Zers, maybe have a decrease in the likelihood to adopt organized religion, right? Like, hey, we want to measure that, right? That sounds like an interesting question. Then you start off with a hypothesis. You're like, hey, I think because of this, right? That's an assumption, your hypothesis. You have to start somewhere. And then you say, well, okay, how are we gonna figure it out? Well, we're gonna get a bunch of Gen Zers together, mixed up, right? Male, female, different cultures, identities, all sorts of things. And then we'll give out a survey questionnaire, get some data collected, and then we'll draw some sort of conclusions, right? So then we say, now we figured out maybe something psychologically of why this is happening. And that would be the scientific method. You can publish a paper and be like, oh, this is interesting. You did actual research. You've done real research, right? Not like how people say, I went on Google and did the research. Original research is like, no, you got a bunch of people together, you analyze them, interpret the results, blah, blah, blah. Right? Maybe the results would go against your hypothesis. It doesn't matter. The results are the results. Right? All right, so we'll talk about that, how to collect evidence, record observations, and recording how observations are made. So again, we can skip Sir Francis Bacon, but let's just get to sort of the history of this. Who here is familiar with Freud? Who could tell me something about Sigmund Freud? What do you remember about him? Yeah.
Didn't they not like him? Because I know, didn't he do some experiments that were kind of unethical towards what people believe?
Yeah, I mean, Freud always did a lot of unethical stuff. Freud was a cocaine user, a big one too, but ethical, I mean, depends on the time, right? Depends on the place, depends on the context. Who else we're gonna say something about Freud? Yes?
Didn't he have an outfit that was wrong?
Yeah, he had issues with his mom, and so, we could talk about that, an Oedipus complex of some sort. All right, so Freud is considered like the grandfather of psychology, right? In a sense that it's a field. Now we're like actually making it a field of study, something where people actually could focus on, and we can all understand it and learn more about, and increase the body of knowledge about it. But like I said, before Freud, we'll get back to Freud, right? There were people like Aristotle, way before Freud, right? 2,400 years ago, asking big questions and making observations. Like, hey, why do lions behave this way, right? If you go out into the Serengeti, you observe a bunch of baboons, like, why do they do that? Like, maybe their behavior is very similar to us. What's that all about, right? Why do they do what they do? So people like Aristotle went out, made observations, wrote about it, but we just still didn't call it psychology, right? People like Rene Descartes had questions to be like, how do you actually know you're alive? He said the only way he knew that he was alive is that he was thinking. He is no longer thinking, he knew he wouldn't exist, right? But these are big, big questions, big sort of philosophical questions. Other philosophers came about and, related, they related maybe the idea of God to psychology. And say, hey, we've had all these religious beliefs and spiritual practices for so long. It's never went away, we still got them. Is God a psychological thing? Or is God something real? Right? So they've asked these questions, right? Then along comes Freud, and Freud starts really sort of jotting down and measuring things. Starts doing psychoanalytic things, which is basically, hey, you sit over in this chair, don't face me, look away, so you're not focused on me. I'll sit in my chair and just start talking. Tell me about your day, tell me about your life, right? And I'll take notes. And then maybe sometimes you'll skip something, right? Oh yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Oh, that's a little bit. Right? Sometimes the stuff you don't say is more important than stuff you say. Right? Freud would record dreams, and so he came up with all sort of conclusions. Freud believed that adults are basically giant children. That every issue you have as an adult comes from childhood. Right? You just don't remember it anymore. So your long-term memory. And we say it's in the subconscious. Right? You don't remember it anymore. It may happen at 1 year old, 2 years old. They ask you, hey, tell me about when you were 1. You're like, I don't remember that. Like, anything important happened then? Like, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Right, so Freud believed that most of our issues come from early life, right? And so we were primarily raised by our mothers, so he think primarily for men that we have an extreme attachment to mom, because mom is really nurtured and cared for us, right? But he also believed that at some point, if your mom was overbearing, you become fixated on her. So if you start looking for a woman, she has to meet that criteria of being just like mom, kind of every way. Now you call that Oedipus complex. He said subconsciously you kind of really want your mom, right, in a sexual way. Right? So Freud is a very controversial figure. On the flip side, Freud also said the same thing about girls. He called it Electra complex, right? So Oedipus for the boys, Electra for the girls. He said a lot of girls suffer from penis envy, which means they saw their dad be authoritative in the household in the way that they treat their mom. If the dad is at the top of the hierarchy, they're like, oh, I want that power. I want power just like this. How come does it feel like that? It's less power, right? Where's the power lie? And Freud said, it lied in having a penis, right? Subconsciously, but think about this. So Freud is controversial. Some people believe in kind of everything Freud says. Freud says human beings primarily concerned with two things in everything they do in life: sex and aggression. Substitute aggression for competition. He said everything we're trying to do is to continue the human race, right? We're all trying to look for a mate, the perfect mate, so we can, with the perfect genetics, so we can have beautiful children, they'll survive and thrive. And also, how do we do that? We have to compete against each other. We got to go to school and get better grades, you than him, right? Get a job. I want to compete. I want the Ferrari. Too bad that person has a Toyota, right? We're constantly competing. I want to be a nurse. In order to do it, I got to knock off a few people, right? Constantly competing with each other so that we can reach some sort of end goal. So this is what Freud believed, right? I don't necessarily believe everything that Freud says, right? So Freud was controversial, but very powerful. He started sort of the field of psychology. So we get a chance, read a ton of Freud, and you'll come up with some interesting things. He also believed that dreams are extremely important and can give you a lot of information. But most people don't record their dreams, right? You kind of forget them when you wake up. But he said dreams are an insight to finally get information from the subconscious. He said basically when you're asleep, you're in the subconscious realm. And when you wake up, you kind of look more in the awareness realm, right? You have to do stuff and pay attention. But when you're sleep, he was like, no, now you're in that realm where that's 90% that subconscious material, you could find important things there. So he's like, pay attention to your dream, right? They connect things, they relate things one to another. So Freud was interesting. Freud had a colleague named Carl Jung. Anyone ever heard of Jung? J-U-N-G? Okay. So Carl Jung, he's even more interesting because he was like, he didn't agree with all the sex and aggression stuff that Freud talked about. He said actually a lot of it does come from spirituality. He's like Freud was disregarding spirit, right? And made everything about the flesh, right? Everything was so carnal. He says we do have a spirit. We do have some sense of otherworldliness, right? In the back of our mind, we kind of feel that there's something more happening. Like there's a purpose and reason, and we're not just dead, right? There's something bigger happening, and we can tap into that to find real meaning and purpose for things that we do, and ultimately for who we are. All right, I don't want to bore you too much with talking about the history. Any questions so far? Okay. So we'll talk about, I'll go through kind of what we'll talk about throughout the course. Right, we'll talk about mental disorders. Anyone here know anyone with a mental disorder? All right. Okay, we'll talk about disorders. Who knows what a disorder is? All right, throughout your college career, because you all are freshmen, right? All right. Throughout your college career, you'll constantly see this. Anybody know what this is? All right, bell curve. You'll see this in maybe close to every class. I mean, close to every science with something to do with math and logic. Right, so we say disorder. We want to keep things simple, not make anything complicated. Disorder is anything out of the average, right? Normal behavior is all of this, right? Abnormal is this. Say politics, oh, Democrat, Republican, okay, we got independence and libertarian, right? Average would be this. The people who think completely different don't care about Democrats and Republicans. Very small, right? The subset of that. So keep that in mind. A disorder is simply abnormal, right? Outside of the realm of normal. And who's defining normal? That may change by environment. Go to a different country, their normal is different than our normal, right? And think of a disorder as anything that causes anxiety to yourself or others. Just as simple. Somebody was disturbed in class and like screaming every 5 minutes. That would be disorder, right? That's abnormal, right? We might have to address that at some point. So we'll talk about mental disorders. We'll talk about social psychology, which deals with groups. So back to thinking about grouping, right? We are social. And so your identity is comprised of a few things, right? Your social identity is comprised of what? What do you think? What are some items that begin with this? Your ID. Okay, race, right? We say, hey, guess what? Demographic information, what's your race? Right? You're like, why is that important? What is race? Is race a real thing? If you believe it to be, right? Maybe you gotta believe in race. Who here thinks race is scientific? Unscientific? No opinion was. Right, so we say these are social constructs. You go into a different society, they get different races. Come back to the United States, you got these races, and they'll probably change over time too. Right? Think about this. At one point in time, Latinos or Hispanics, they weren't considered white. Not on that census data. Right? Now it says white, non-Latino. Hey, interesting. Why did it change? There's a little shift there. Right? We didn't include Arabs at one point. These Asians. It changes. It's construct. And you could say why? I don't know, maybe politics or something, right? Maybe economics, who knows? Who cares? Just realize it's non-scientific, right? It's a social construct. In the former Soviet Union, which is currently Russia, at one point in time, they had like 70 races. Guess what? They were all white. But that don't make sense. It did make sense to them, right? So keep that in mind. The other part would be gender, right? What is your gender? How do you describe yourself? The other one would be religion. That forms your social identity, who you link up with, right? In social identity theory, we say in-group, out-group, which is simply us and them. But who's your people? That is my people. Who's not you? Everybody that's not my people, right? So think of this, in our society, once again, Freud may be right, sex competition. Once again, we're constantly competing even on a cultural level. What time is it? Okay, we get out of here, what, 3:20?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, 4 minutes. All right, so yeah, this is a good place to start. We'll have the syllabus up by Wednesday, and a lot of the course content is not gonna be a lot of stuff that we'll have to tackle, but we'll go over that on Wednesday, and we'll really start diving into more into chapter 1. Yeah, on Canvas, that information about going to access the code for the book, make sure you go to the library and get that code. You know, so that's basically your way of paying for the book, right? Just paying for it on the electronic way, make sure the code. And if you have any other questions, email me. Any other questions before we go? Gonna ask me anything, random questions. What do you want to know? Yes?
Where can we contact you? Where can we contact you?
Okay, oh, my information, I need to get out there. All right, I'll put that in a announcement. I'll make an announcement with my contact information, so you'll be able to email me. Any other questions? We're gonna have fun in this class, right? But here's what I want everyone to do. I want everyone to try to participate in the class. There are no stupid answers, right? I don't expect you to know crazy definitions or anything, but your answer is your answer. I can't own your answer, right? But at least try to get out your answer, what you think things are, because then we can have a discussion about it. There are no perfect answers, especially when it deals with psychology. It's an imperfect field, right? So don't hesitate to try to, kind of converse and create dialogue with the rest of your class. All right, I'll let you go, and I will see you on Wednesday. Oh, by the way, leave your nameplates up here with me, so I know who all